How's it going, everyone? So I just want to talk about a topic that was brought up. So I was talking to a coworker of mine. I'm leaving a company in a couple of days, and we've worked together for a while, and she was just kind of asking me for some last-minute advice. She had mentioned that she is also thinking about leaving that company, but is worried because she's been at the company for less than 2 years, and she's concerned that if she goes out seeking another job, they're going to see that she was at her current company for less than 2 years. They're going to label her a job hopper, and basically no one's going to hire her because she doesn't show any consistency at any particular company. And that was essentially her worry, is that I need to stay at this company for a couple more years so it looks better on my resume so I can get a better job somewhere else. And I think this is a huge concern that a lot of people have, and I just wanted to kind of share my perspective of it. I have been in the human services field for about 7 years now, and in those 7 years I've worked for about 5 companies. That means I am staying with a company on average maybe a year and some change. Some companies I've stayed with for less than a year, some companies I've stayed with closer to 2. But I am 100% by definition a job hopper when you look at my professional career resume. And the company that I'm leaving right now, I've been there for less than a year, and I have no concerns about finding other jobs. I interviewed for about 2 weeks and I got 4 different offers. And this is something I just want people to know. You don't have to dedicate years of your life to a job that makes you unhappy out of fear of not being able to find another one. Yes, given your field and your desired profession, there might be some contingencies on that, and you might need to have, some history of stability with a certain company. But for my field, human services, I'm just going to use for an example. I worked on a suicide crisis line as my first introduction job into this field. I was there for about a year. I really liked it there, but it paid like $8.75 an hour, and I needed to pay bills. And they wouldn't even let me work, more than 35 hours because it was a nonprofit and they had absolutely no money. And I told them that I really like it here, but I need to be hitting at least 40 hours or else I can't pay rent. And they said that they just couldn't do it. So my expectation for that job was to get full-time hours, and they couldn't meet it, so I had to leave that company. I love that company, but I need to pay my bills, so I had to find another position. The next position I joined up with was a direct care staff for a company that ran group homes for adults and kids with severe behavioral issues. I was at that company for about a year and a half. Again, I love that company. I gave my all to that company. There were weeks where I put in about 110 hours. There were pay periods where I put in about 210 hours. They had morning, evening, and sleep overnight shifts, and it was completely common for me to work 2 or 3 days straight at that company. That company was literally my life. And I got promoted. I got very good at, not to brag, but I became very good at my responsibilities very quickly, and I got promoted a number of times within that year and a half time period. And when it came towards the end of the year and a half, there was an opening for a specific type of management position that I really wanted to do because it involved creating programs for the kid clients that they had. And I was very passionate about that kind of work, so I wanted to apply for that. And I spoke with my supervisor and the director of the department, and they told me to my face, you've been absolutely amazing since you've been here. We have no complaints. However, this next position is going to require you to meet with a lot of professionals like doctors and case managers and things like that. And you have tattoos and piercings, and that's not the professional image that we want to give. So they basically told me that I was no longer eligible for promotions because anything higher I did not look the professional part for. I had the expectation for that company that I was going to have promotional opportunities if my work made me eligible for them. I didn't want things handed to me. I wanted to work my ass off to earn them. But it got to a point that no matter how hard I worked, because of the way I looked, I wasn't professional enough for them. So they stopped meeting my standards and I had to leave. I love that company, but I don't like the feeling of being, oh yeah, you've worked here for a year and a half and you've gotten as high as you can get. I have a lot of ambition, and that just wasn't, fulfilling my need. It wasn't meeting my expectations, so I moved on. The next position I took was at a similar facility for group homes. I was overseeing two different house and a separate program on the side. So about 15 clients in total, about 40, 50 staff at any given point in time. It was a much larger load than I have ever had before. Lots of people, both clients and staff, I was having to manage, train, making sure they stay on top of their stuff. I really enjoyed that quite a bit. And I ran into an issue because my supervisor was responsible for creating programs for our clients, and she'd never gotten officially trained on program writing, and there are very specific state requirements that you need to legally meet in order for a program to be implemented, and she wasn't meeting those with some of our programs. So I was like, oh, you never got trained. No, that's fine. I actually went through quite a bit of extensive training on this. Let me show you some pointers. And the idea of her direct report giving her feedback made her very, very upset. She did not like it. And I kind of backed off. I was like, okay, if you don't want to see my notes, that's completely fine. So I put my stuff in my bag and I left for our break room that we were using. And I left my bag and my coat in my break room so I could go to a meeting for one of my clients that was in the same building. And she had gone into the break room, opened my bag, dug through it, pulled out specific documents that I had made notes on, like to show her where she was kind of not meeting the requirements, and had notes like, you can't word things like this because it's against the law. Instead, you could do A, B, or C. And she used those documents to write me up for insubordination, because I should not be telling her how to write programs. And that company failed to meet my standards. I wanted a team that I could rely on. I wanted a boss who could teach me things. And they didn't have that for me. They weren't meeting my standards, so I left and moved on to a new company. Next company I started with was around the Twin Cities metro area. It was in Savage. We worked in Shakopee, Apple Valley, southern metro area. And I was a program director there, so I oversaw the managers, who oversaw the leads, who oversaw the different homes and facilities that we ran. And I, again, loved that job. That job I gave my life to. Any given minute of the day for almost 2 years, I was working either for clients or for staff or for managers. I was opening up homes, covering shifts if needed, giving emotional and professional support to people. It was just nonstop work, and I loved it. I had no regrets with that whatsoever. And then that company got a new president, and that new president changed their focus away from people with disabilities who we're serving to, no, we need to make more money because we're a for-profit business and we need to be pulling in, $3 million of revenue per quarter or something like that. It's okay to have that, those goals, but when you're in a human services industry and you prioritize, money over people, you tend to do things that are kind of illegal, especially if you're not familiar with the laws, which he was not. So he was kind of putting us in a position where you either need to break these certain state laws to earn us money, or we're going to fire you. He gave me several chances. I did not want to break the state law, because if you break the state law, you could get what's called a VA charge, and basically once you have that, you'll never be able to work in a human service industry again. I wasn't willing to do that, and he also put me in a position where there was a manager who made a minor mistake. It was a completely common thing to do. It was a great learning experience for them. I was kind of expecting it to happen, and I could use that as a teaching moment, and he heard about it, and he basically told me, oh hey, that manager made a mistake. We only have, A players on our team, and A players don't make mistakes, so you need to fire her. And I refused to do that, and he ended up terminating me from my position because I wasn't willing to do the things that broke the law, as well as do the really unethical things that would harm our clients and our staff. And I was completely fine with that. He put me in a position where I had to jeopardize my career to make him happy, and I was not willing to do that. So I left that position, and I started a new position with a new company, a much bigger company that operates in the Twin Cities metro area and kind of all over. Now I've been at this company for about 6 months, and the clinical work that they do for clients is great. The team that I have directly working with me every single day, I love. They are fantastic. And the administrative side is just not meeting my standards of what I need in a workplace. They don't have the work ethic that I value. They don't have the professionalism that I value. They don't have the skill that I value. They don't have the same priorities that I value, and they don't take feedback very well at all. All of those issues combined with certain things that they've done with the company and how it negatively affects the people who I work with and our clients really kind of made me realize that, hey, I've given this place 6 months. They're not meeting my expectations that I have for a workplace. So I'm going to start looking for other jobs. I interviewed for a few weeks, got a couple interviews. That question came up multiple times. We see here on your resume that you typically don't stay at a company for longer than a year or two. Why is that? And I have no problem saying that those companies weren't meeting my expectations. I have no problem saying that I was fired because I was unwilling to do something illegal that would harm either my clients or my staff. And I was unwilling to fire someone who I didn't think deserved to be fired. So in my experience, having a resume that looks like you changed jobs or changed companies on a consistent basis that makes you look like a job hopper is not a negative thing. You can still get a job. It's just going to be more difficult for you. I can tell you that when you look at my resume versus someone who's been at the same job for about 6 or 7 years, my resume has to have 5 times more skills listed than theirs do. And I need to be able to prove that I am twice as good at any of those skills than anyone else who I'm competing with for my position. That means I have to do a lot of work, not only on the clock but off the clock as well, to make sure that I can compete with someone who stayed in the same company for 7 years straight. But it can be done, and I have done it. And I can promise you that had I have stayed with that first company or even the second company all those years ago, and I had stuck it out for 5 or 6 years, I would be nowhere near as competent or skilled or knowledgeable about areas in the clinical profession or in team management or skill development or team development or culture development or any of that type of stuff that I am now. It's scary to leave a job that you're at right now for something unknown, and I think a lot of people would rather stay at a job that makes them miserable just because it's easier. When you break down the hours, your entire adult life, not counting sleep, work makes up like 35 to 40% of your life. And the idea of someone giving up 40% of their life to stay at a company that makes them miserable because it makes one line on their resume look better, or because they don't have to have the reputation of being a job hopper, or because they feel an obligation to a company that's not meeting their standards, is honestly just heartbreaking. Like, that's your life. You're giving up because it's easier. And ultimately, the decision's completely up to you. You need to go with what makes you happy. If staying at your current company is tolerable and you get something out of it, like you get experience, you get connections, you get a bigger paycheck, and that's okay with you, then by all means, stay with your company. But if you are miserable at your company, don't fear looking for other positions because it can be scary. Yeah, it will require more work, but I can promise you that work will be worth it. You'll find a place that makes you happy. And if you can't find a place that makes you happy, you're still going to be way more qualified than anyone else that you're competing with when you apply to other places. The only thing I would advise is to make sure that whenever you change positions, make sure there's a purpose behind it. Don't just say, oh, this place doesn't let me be late, so I'm leaving. Or this place doesn't have enough PTO for me, so I'm leaving. Or the guy at the front desk of this place gave me a negative look, so I'm leaving. That will get you in trouble, and you're not going to benefit from that at all. But I see no reason why you shouldn't leave a job after 6 months if it's not meeting your standards and it's not making you happy. You gave a company 6 months of your life. And if they can't provide you the type of work that makes you happy, that provides you challenge, that makes you feel like you're growing and learning, then they're not a good fit for you. You don't benefit by staying there, and neither does the company. In the long run, it serves you both better if you decide to leave so you can go find a place that makes you happy, and now they have an opening so that they can take on someone that better fits what they're looking for and isn't going to be looking for anything more. And those are my thoughts on job hopping. I've definitely done it in my career, and I do not regret it at all. Yes, I had to work a lot more than the people who just settle at the same place for 5, 6, or 7 years, but it was completely worth it, because now when they and I compete for a similar position, even if I'm the external applicant, I have complete confidence that I will blow them out of the water. But again, end of the day, completely up to you. You have to find what makes you happy and go for that. Thanks for watching.